So, welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, here on Inside Movies Galore. We are discussing Jack Arnold's Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954. Michelle, since you haven't been here for some time,
Yes.
give us a little bit of a lowdown of the film and what your thoughts on it were the first time that you probably saw it and this time.
This actually was, I think, the first time I saw it. I knew what it was. I've seen snippets of it here and there, but I've never actually sat and watched the whole thing. So,
Blasphemous.
so yeah, well, so I actually sat and watched. I may have, but of course I did a lot of drugs back when, so who knows?
Alrighty.
I really liked it. I just watched. It was probably about 4 weeks ago. I watched The Shape of Water.
Okay.
And I've heard a lot of correlations between the two, so I was kind of excited to see what correlations I found. And other than the creature itself, there really was no correlation between the two movies. I saw nothing other than the creature itself.
Okay. And what for its time period? What do you think that?
Well, some observations that I had is, for it being a black lagoon, which is supposed to be, you can't see through it kind of water, very murky, brackish. It was pretty amazingly clear. They had great visibility with those cameras in the water. So I was like, it doesn't fit. When they're under the water, it was Caribbean-y. It wasn't like Swamp River. It had like the whole wrong kind of. It was not correct. The way it should have looked. To a normal person, I guess, how you would think. But considering it's 1954 when they made this, it was actually very, very well done. And considering most of this is done on bodies of water, it was done shot from and by boat. That in itself is tricky to not have your cameras bouncing all over the place and things like that. So, at that time period. So for that, I thought it was actually very, very well done.
Okay.
The little thing that really bothered me is this little pile of branches, though. That stops the boat from leaving the inlet, and they can't get past 5 branches. He's not. He's supposed to be like swamp creature. He's not part beaver. So the whole. It just didn't work for me. Little inconsistencies like that.
Okay. Katie, why don't you tell me, is this your first time seeing the film?
Like Michelle, I had never really sat down and seriously watched it. It wasn't of the Universal monsters, creatures, like the one that least interested me. Like as a kid and stuff, I always was more into like Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff like that. So I think it was probably the sci-fi, influence there that made me as a younger person just not watch it and not take it serious. So this is actually my first time really sitting down and watching it to watch it and to take it seriously. And I actually really liked it a lot. I enjoyed the sci-fi element to this film probably more than, say, like a Forbidden Planet or whatever. I liked the direction that this went. Particularly, it was believable to me, like why they were there or why they were looking for this creature. Like I could, if I was watching this in the 50s, I think it would have been a really legitimately cool and scary film for the time. I can only imagine what it was like to see movies in that time since I didn't live then. But I really enjoyed just how they worked that sci-fi element in, and there was some little things that like it's a movie from the 50s, so yeah, there were some things that made me laugh that were kind of ridiculous, and some of the special effects. But I thought overall, the costume was really well done. Like I pay attention to costuming and things like that quite a bit and try to figure out how they did certain things. So I actually really liked the costume that they used and thought like he did a really good job swimming in it and everything. I was really intrigued by all of that, like the technical aspects of the costuming, and there probably wasn't a ton of special effects that they really had to do. It's just good costuming, and the fact that it was shot in black and white. And I mean, movies were shot in color at that point, it was possible to be shot in color, but I think being that it was black and white sort of added some of that creepy element to it that I don't know if it in that time period made it creepy, but it made me think of Dane and his black and white movies and how, he goes for a particular mood with the black and white. And I sort of felt that in this movie too. So overall, I liked it.
Okay, cool. Red Raven, was this a first time watch for you?
Yeah, this was my first time watching it, and I really liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was really good. I really liked everything about it, and I read somewhere that even though it was shot in 3D, because in 1953 was like when the whole 3D craze came out, but then it started dying down in 1954, so more people saw this movie in the 2D version than the 3D version.
Correct. But
and then also the actor that played the Gill Man was two different actors. One played him in the water, and then one played him on land.
Correct.
Yeah, they had somebody who was a diver in the water costume.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that they had two different actors in the costume. One was on land, and then one was in the water.
In fact, I remember a documentary. Maybe it was a behind-the-scenes documentary based on the creatures from the Black Lagoon, and I remember seeing an interview with the guy who was in the suit, and he was like overheated entirely the entire time, and it was hard to maneuver in it, but when you see him in the water, you can see that the actor that was playing him in the water was actually very agile. You could see,
right.
You could see that his torso was moving, and it was just kind of unique. And I think that's why the water wasn't murky and swampy. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
So.
And then also it said that. They re-released it into theaters in 1975.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, they re-released it then because that was when the craze of the drive-in theaters was happening again, I believe, and also it was also the start of the fall of the drive-in. Age.
And then it said there was two sequels after it in 1955 and 1956.
Correct. The second one was Creatures Walk Among Us, and then the third one was The Revenge of the Creature.
That's wrong.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those, but I'd like to.
Second one, and then
Revenge is the second one. Creature Walks Among Us is the third one.
There we go.
Creature Walks Among Us was the one that got like weird and philosophical.
So in any case, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about your first experience with the creature? Brandon?
Septum dude, where are you at?
Okay.
Sorry, I had the mute on.
Oops.
I actually had never seen it before. I had gotten them when I was picking up the individual monster collections.
Okay.
I kept on having problems getting hold of the big monster movie set, but I wanted all the movies of each of the classic Universal monsters. So I used that opportunity to watch all three movies in the documentary that they supplied on there.
Okay. Did you get those sweet steel books? Oh, sorry.
I wish I had a steel book of it. But it was actually, I was very impressed by it, by how well it was done. I mean, even the intricacies of how they worked the slight dance between the creature and the woman swimming at the top, even though she didn't realize it, it felt like a dance that they were both doing. Okay. And looking at the intricacies of the suit, like whether they made they made like a special one with air bladders in it to look like the gills were working. Just all the different things aside from the weirdness of the third movie. It was to me quite a pleasant surprise.
Okay. And Dustin, why don't you tell me a little bit about your first encounter with the creature? And I'm not talking about the action figure that you're stroking there.
Well, I just had to get him out. I mean, look at his ass. It's spectacular.
Look at his ass, though.
Not literally, as the flames of hell ignite in the background. Well, fine, weirdo. Anyway, so the creature from the Black Lagoon sort of digs into my childhood, which is somewhat rare for some of the horror things that I'm into. I used to read a lot of Goosebumps books, and R.L. Stine said that the creature was his favorite, and so I went and I saw it then, and I didn't quite get it, but I liked it anyway. Like, it's sort of funny that she felt that this one was boring. I've been describing the creature from the Black Lagoon as the universal monster that's worth a damn, because I haven't seen all of the Universal classic monsters, but each has been kind of like when is it over? Like at some point, and that didn't happen with the creature. So plus he's the most unique out of all of them. I think he's the only original creation, although I'm almost certainly wrong about that. So, I mean, I've had a bit of a history with the creature, and am really happy to get to talk about this one. So, I did indeed get the fancy steelbook.
Okay.
Out of the way. This was the only one that, like, actually sold out of those two.
Well, and the interesting thing about this director is he's kind of known for many of the different monster films that were out there. For example, It Came from Outer Space. Also, he directed the sequel to this, and Tarantula from 1955. And later The Space Children from 1958, Monster on Campus from 1958 as well. So, I mean, ultimately, he was also relatively big into the TV, certain episodes of Rawhide, and other TV things like Alias Smith and Jones, some episodes of the Brady Bunch. So we definitely have a man who seems to know his way about the filmmaking world. So, Dane, why don't you tell me your first encounter with the creature?
Well, I grew up on all of the classic Universal monster movies, and never at any point did I say that when is this going to be over, because all of them held my interest. They were all very formative parts of my childhood, especially The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That was my number one favorite out of all of them, still is. It's one of my all-time favorite films of any genre, any time period. Because it had a huge impact on me and my style of filmmaking, particularly because I grew up in Monterey, California, which has the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is one of the leading marine research institutes in the world. And so I took swimming lessons when I was little, and it was like I was very much entrenched in the beauty of nature and the majesty of evolution of marine biology specifically. And I was swimming, and it was just like it was natural. Plus the fact that I think out of all the Universal monster films, it tells the most complete story. It has the most suspense. It has a good mixture of humor in it as well, and it just has a great sense of scientific wonder, which you have to love about the 1950s was the golden age of sci-fi, at least in terms of cinema, and you can really see that there's a sense of wonder about the film, and that just really piqued my interest when I was a kid. Because had I not gone down the route of filmmaking, and if I had been more, I don't know, less creatively inclined and more mathematically inclined, I probably would have been like a marine scientist or something like that. And even today, I'm still highly interested in all that kind of stuff. And so and I love the Gill Man. I love, I don't know, I can't say enough good things about it, really.
Cool.
Nice. I've got some animal horror movies I can recommend to you later. Then, that's pretty cool having that kind of connection to it. Like, I was more of an Alien kid, so that's maybe why my sensibilities were kind of different.
There's no way I would have been allowed to watch that at that age.
That was one of the first movies they let me rent. Like, I was 3 when I saw Alien.
That explains a lot.
Well, the creature didn't bother me, but when Ash gets his head punched off, like, that freaked me out, like, bad. But I was fine with the alien killing people. It was.
Does
I was
anyone here like me think that, in a sense, that the story between the creature and the main lady in the film, that there is, in a sense, a kind of romance going on?
They've made an argument for that, but I don't. I can see the symbolism once it's been pointed out. Like in the Blu-ray, there was a lot of talk about that in some of the special features, like how there was sort of a like sexual element to like the swimming scene
in a creepy, rapey way.
Yeah, well, when you look for it, I mean, yeah, you can see it, but I don't quite think it was intentional.
Well,
even though the first thing he seemed to have was a foot fetish.
Well, keep in mind that by this point we'd already had King Kong, we'd already had Frankenstein, we'd already had Dracula, Wolfman. I mean, in every one of those, you have the classic image of the monster carrying off the girl, and in some ways it is, you know, a sexual thing like it is with Dracula. Other ways it's like a primitive fascination kind of thing like it is with Frankenstein's monster and with the Wolfman. In this case, keep in mind that the Gill Man hasn't really seen humans other than the ones encroaching on his lagoon, as well as he hasn't seen a human woman before. So if anything, it's has its own sort of fascination to it. So while you could easily read a sexual element into it, I mean, besides just the archetypical thing of carrying off the girl, which every monster movie from that era has, he's observing them just as much as they're observing him, and of course he's also primitive, so he wants them off his land. He's just doing what an animal's supposed to do.
Okay.
I've actually also heard or read that there's sort of some racist overtones that people have brought up about the creature representing like the black man trying to steal the white woman away, or much like the King Kong type scenario. And even like if you look at some of the pictures of the creature like in color, like the movie posters or whatever, it's very, very reminiscent of the really stereotypical African American portraits from those times. And I was just reading on that, and I thought it was really interesting, and I didn't know if anybody would have picked up on that. Like, I didn't pick up on it until I read about it, but
I think that's kind of personally, I think that's kind of overreaching, simply if for no other reason that the geography doesn't work because it's in the Amazon.
It's not that that's what it's supposed to be, but that it's a representation of that. They're playing it out in movie form, not necessarily.
I can see how they could come to that conclusion with the way they colorize the lips in some versions, but I think the entire thing was just like flat gray. And a lot of those weird color combos, they made a comment about that on the Blu-ray, that they weren't sure how they were getting all these weird colors on it. when they were doing those posters.
What do you think, Brandon? Do you think that there was some kind of a romance going on between the two main characters, between the female and the creature? I mean, I know there was kind of a love triangle going on with the two men and her.
There was sort of a romance going on with the creature and the main female lead in all three movies, in my opinion. Well, maybe not on the female lead's part, but at least on the creature's part. As I say that, but in the beginning scene, I mean, that's just unmistakable. The way that the creature swims alongside her, looking at her, almost caressing her, instead of the outright just basic aggression and attack that he shows everybody else. Because even this far into the film, the creature has killed people pretty much indiscriminately.
Oh yeah, but
not her.
He's at least killed 4 people.
Well,
So-
one thing you have to say with the female lead in this, and they don't do as much with it as they would nowadays, but at least the effort was made relative to the 50s, is that she's able to, I mean, she is a scientist along with them, and is trying to figure out what it is, what the fossil means. So I mean, nowadays they would take that and run with it even more, but give them credit for doing that at that time. And I think Kay is one of the more interesting of the Universal leading ladies at that time period. But
And I
also,
think she only tripped over her own feet like once, where it was ridiculous, where she looked helpless. I only saw that happen one time.
well,
Yeah, they were better. They were better on that than they typically were, especially for that time period. Like some of the characters did kind of give her crap for it once or twice.
give them credit for that. Not only the fact that unlike a lot of 80s slasher films that would come later, these characters have every reason to be where they are. They have a reason to go there. They have a reason to be there, and they have a reason to stay there. And why they're trapped even makes sense. Which, here's the thing, like the branches or whatever, the tree that is trapping them may not look like much from the surface, but there's a lot more to it when you dive down, so, and it's enough to trap a boat. I don't think it wouldn't be good for the boat to plow through that, tear it up.
Plus, they've shown that
It was not well made like a beaver dam. That's what my point was. It should be fairly easy.
Sorry. They have shown that the creature is extremely strong, like multiple times. So I fully believed he was able to like throw some trees in there.
I think he was very. Well, that's the thing I really like about the Gill Man, is that he's very intelligent, but just the right amount of intelligent. Like, he's not dumb. He behaves like an animal. Like a territorial animal that is clever and wants to keep interlopers out of his turf, but also now that they're there, he's not going to let them go. So it has a lot in common with what would eventually become Jaws, in the sense that, like, you have a creature of an aquatic creature that is very intelligent, that is able to resist efforts to capture it, like with the net, or like the barrels in Jaws, and one that attacks the boat in the middle of the night. It causes some of the parts of the boat to break off, and this one didn't have the ship sink, which that would have been cool. But then again, they would never have got.
They'd all totally died if the ship sank there. Yeah.
Plus, they probably still needed pieces of the sets so that they could just go on with each scene.
Anyway.
Did anyone notice how when they were going down below in the water and they were shooting those water spears? Did anyone notice how the spears just stayed in the gun?
No.
They did?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I noticed that too.
That was something that I noticed. You saw the bubbles, but the spears that were with the gun stayed in the gun.
I thought those were just like the spare spears.
Well, there were
It was
spares.
a quick reload.
Well, to me, when I was growing up, of course, the Universal monster movies were part of my repertoire as well. Watching them, learning about the different monsters and whatnot. And the Gill Man, to me, is an interesting story because to me viewing it now from then, I notice a little bit more. And to me, in my own mind, there is a romance going on to me, because it's not about, to me it's not even that it's about that he's killing because it's his territory. His main focal point is getting to that woman. It's like the people that he's killing are just in his way. So to me, there's definitely a romance thing going on. So I mean, whether or not everyone else realized that or whatnot, to me, there was a kind of a thing going on. So, Red Raven, what do you think? Do you think there was kind of a romance going on? And what does any of the ladies here think of that? Katie's idea that there was a race thing going on.
Not my idea. Something I read.
Okay.
I just want to make that clear. Not my idea.
I definitely looked at some of the posters in color, and you could definitely tell that, like, the lips are different colors in some of the posters. Some of them they made them like bright pink, and then others they had them like the same color as his skin. So I could see where maybe they could take it that way, but I don't know really.
Neither do I. I've actually never thought of it in that light. I guess I would have to look at the posters a little bit more and overreach a little bit.
I don't think that theory holds up, personally. I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest a race tie. I mean, there's been other, like, like something like I Walked with a Zombie, which is I only bring it up just because the setting is more amenable to some kind of, race commentary of some sort or other. Just because the setting, the fact that there are actual, non-white humans in it and that kind of stuff. This thing is the Creature from the Black Lagoon is so heavily rooted in science and animal behavior, animal evolution, all that stuff that just, it doesn't seem to fit in with the kind of story that they're trying to tell.
Okay. So, did anyone else have anything else to add? Dustin?
Hey, I thought it was kind of odd that the film opens up with "in the beginning," blah 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 blah, and then it jumps right into like animal evolution. So it seemed to be kind of sending almost mixed signals. Like, I think with the '50s crowd, maybe you needed that kind of opening to get to evolution, but it was kind of jarring, like, to me.
Well, it's trying to establish the idea. It's a way of illustrating, well, a form of creation in the sense of like a primordial. It's really trying to get to essentially the primordial ooze or the primordial forms of life, and Earth that has no life and is only just barely formed, has oceans and that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's a highly condensed version of the history of the Earth formation and in the history of the Earth's formation and what evolution is and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's less truncated than you would think it would be. Obviously, it's not a science textbook, but it's and plus it's just got that extra layer of drama to it as well.
Well, it did. It just seemed like to me, it felt like the tones were clashing, and I was kind of like, what? Oh, whatever.
Yeah, like in the beginning, God created the Earth in 7 days, and then evolution happened in 5 billion years. I kind of picked up on that too. As weird.
It's that 50s melodrama voice where like
Roe versus Wade was creeping in.
Well, you know that this is the '60s, and it's not a but no, this example I'm about to reference, it was from a '60s film, and it didn't actually make the final cut. But did you know that in Doctor Strangelove, the whole plot of the film was supposed to be from the point of view of aliens observing a unfold on Earth. You know, so in other words, they were, and that one's granted that's a comedy, but still, it just kind of tells you that I think that we are used to a very specific way of stories being told to us these days that I think that people at that time weren't looking at things that same way. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. Plus the fact that it just gives it that extra air of drama, and also the fact that people didn't look at religion and science as like this ginormous dichotomy back then that they do today. And
Okay. Michelle, do you think that there's kind of a misjumbled message there in the beginning?
Not really. I mean, films from that era, they always had some kind of like preface to them where they would say something to kind of get you into the right frame of mind for what you were going to see. And that's all I took that as. To me, it fit.
yeah, I think it's really just setting the scene. That's all it's doing, and I think it does it very well. And keep in mind the fact that the Scopes trial was not that long ago. It was, what was that, the late 20s, I think.
I want to say 28, 29. I'm probably off somewhat.
I thought it was like either that or I thought it was like 25. Let me check that.
That could have been it too. 20 sounds right, although I haven't thought about it for a very long time.
25, that's right. I was right. So that was like almost 30 years prior. So in other words, it wasn't that long ago when the modern day notions of science, of evolution versus religion, that was sort of when that idea first started to come into being. But it was there, but it wasn't nearly as kind of battleground politicized the way that it is now. And
yeah, Billy Graham hadn't destroyed America yet, right?
Here's the question: science fiction films of that era, was evolution really talked of before Creature?
I can't remember any.
Not
have more insight into that.
I can think of, no. And that's another thing to speak about with this film is the fact that I think it really does hold up. I mean, the central premise of it is just the idea that some evolutionary offshoot survive in a remote part of the Earth, which, I mean, we're discovering new species all the time. I actually, right before we started this, there was a story about this, which I have no idea if it's actually true. It could easily be a hoax, but there were these photos that were sent around in, I think it was Florida or someplace down south, of this creature that looked like the Loch Ness Monster that had washed up on shore, and they weren't sure if it was actually an undiscovered species or if it was like a decayed species of shark that they tend to look primitive when they decompose to a certain stage or whatever.
I know a lot about that, actually. The way
It's called cryptozoology.
I used to be hugely into that, yeah. What happens with carcasses like that is when a shark dies, all of the tissue falls off of its spine to really condense the explanation. So what you're left with is like all the bulky stuff falls off, leaving you with this big lump at the end where its head would have been, and then just the spine like connected to whatever's left of the body. And it very often ends up looking like a rotted plesiosaur.
Well, sharks are also mollusks.
It's just the fact that they have so much cartilage. They don't have like a skeleton in the way that we do, where our bones stay around for quite a while.
Right, so parts of it will fall off, and oftentimes the shape you'll get, what looks like a tiny head attached to a neck with the remains of a couple flippers, and boom.
Exactly.
But there has also been possibility that someone created something to look exactly like that and took a photo of it, and there you go.
And that's precisely why I give it many disclaimers there that it's not. I just saw it and it's not been proven whatsoever. But the point is that, I mean, even on the microscopic level, we're discovering new species, discovering new species of fish, insects,
Well,
and that kind of stuff.
not too long ago, they found that Meg shark, or that mega,
The megalodon.
yeah, the megalodon, or what?
The skeleton of it, or a real one?
The jaws of a megalodon, or
I've seen those jaws.
Did they discover an actual pair of jaws? Because the only thing that really fossilizes on those are the teeth. And so the best they've been able to do is make mock-ups of the jaws from the teeth. Like, have they discovered, like, a real fossilized jaw from Megalodon?
Not really too sure, but I know I remember pictures of a giant jaw that would definitely mammoth like all of us in like one combined.
6 feet. 6
Sit
feet.
there, take a picture.
6 feet is the general estimate for that. That the size estimates for Megalodon put it somewhere between 55 to 75 feet, I think. I think 75 may be a little extreme. Like I would personally venture 60 would be. You see, cryptozoology about stuff like this. That was my hobby when I was like younger, like elementary school through high school. I was all about cryptozoology, so I know a lot about this.
It's a fascinating subject. It's not scientific in the conventional sense, but it's more about
it's more fun. I mean,
fun, but it's the idea behind it is not a wrong one in the sense that like you're looking for something that hasn't been discovered yet, something that isn't there, something that perhaps could be there, but we just haven't been able to either find a live one or we've been interpreting it or something. Like I've seen lots of photos of supposedly a chupacabra, but is actually
always like rotted dogs or something like that.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Well, one thing that may encourage you is you probably know about coelacanths, right?
I have heard of it, yeah.
Well, the coelacanth is a fish that disappears from the fossil record. I forget the exact date, but several million years ago. Like, it just ceases to exist. And so it was assumed extinct. And in the 20s, they found living specimens in deep waters off the coast of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is no trace of it whatsoever between when it last appears in the fossils, so many tens, if not hundreds of millions of years ago, and boom, the living ones that they discovered in the 20s. And I mean, it's changed very, very little to the point where it looks like the fossils. I mean, obviously, it must have continued to evolve somewhat, but it's so close. I mean, it may as well be the same thing. So that's always been a big point of encouragement for cryptozoology.
The oceans are vast and deep, and a lot of these creatures have no need to change. There's no need for them to evolve.
Especially in the deep ocean area. Agreed.
There's no reason to say that maybe a crack in the Earth's floor.
Well, it's a punctured equilibrium.
Well, crazy.
Equilibrium where like there's not a compelling sort of genetic reason to evolve, and certain things just kind of peak more or less, even though there is some kind of change, but it's rather slow.
I would argue that that's something you can kind of see examples of in sharks. Like, sharks have very little physical changes, but they have a bunch of other attributes that I would assume would have been... Well, the way I always summarized it was... Now, I don't know this for sure, but the way I always imagined shark evolution was once the body plan was done, like, evolution started working on, like, the insides. So they are very disease resistant. Like, they have, frankly, unknown lifespans in many cases. So evolution doesn't necessarily have to be on the outside. Let's just put it that way. And I mean, I left being superstitious about things when I left religion, but I let myself still have sea monsters because that's just fun, you know. It has a chance of being true too, and that's a really exciting thing. Like reading about, it's like, oh, so and so sighting of this, and actually, it's kind of funny you mentioned Monterey, because it doesn't Monterey Bay have its own monster?
Probably. Not one that I am familiar with, but like the thing is with the trenches and the waters just offshore, they're so deep and so full of some of the richest marine ecosystems you can think of that there's really no need for legends, as far as I know, just because the real things are so beautiful and so they're just able to find so many different things all the time. And I was just lucky enough to be there to see them all with my own eyes. Like they had a deep sea exhibit, and I mean, a lot of that stuff is very Gilman like. It just doesn't happen to be humanoid, but it is equally as fascinating and wondrous. You know.
Most
Yeah,
um,
I'm looking it up right now. It is the monster of Monterey. I'm gonna send you this. You'll love this.
I'm sure I will.
getting back to the creature, what did everyone think about the suit?
The suit was spectacular.
Incredible.
Uh,
What about
They-
you,
I
lady?
thought the eyes were probably one of the creepiest parts.
the eyes looked
Yes.
great. Like in the other ones, they changed it for. Well, they didn't even seem to know what reason they changed the eyes for in the sequels. But like, I know the eyes didn't move, but the way that the guy in the suit acted, like you got like inferences from the face, even though it was expressionless. It's like you could tell he was pissed in this scene,
And when
or sad, or like curious, for example.
you look at his hindsight when he's diving down and you see his tail, it kind of reminds me of like an alligator or something. You know?
He didn't have a tail.
You know, he didn't.
I just like the
The
complexity
noise
of it
he
all.
made, he sounded like a dead cow or something.
I thought that was cool. Like I liked that it was a vocal creature because usually aquatic things aren't terribly vocal.
Well, I loved his sound. It sounds like I don't know what they used to record it
Like a
with.
walrus.
Kind of. I mean, well, actually, Chewbacca's roar was based off of walruses, bears, things like that. But then I don't know what they used for the creature's sound. It sounded very believable. It sounded
That was his sound.
the music.
Yeah.
The music was incredible. But I like that his sounds were kind of like if a frog could roar. You know, that's kind of how I would describe it.
Well, and
Yeah.
one
I'll
other
give it
thing.
that. Yeah.
One other thing that I seem to like about this film is the text in the credits, the way that they. I mean, a lot of films from the 50s, especially the science fiction ones, always had some like cool text to the title or whatnot, even in the trailers. You know, I mean,
You know, funny that you say that because I just remembered. So in college, I did well, actually, it was three projects that I kind of merged into one because they were all so short. You can find it on my YouTube channel. It's not one that I could never release it in an official capacity just because there's way too many copyrighted assets in it. But you can see it on my YouTube channel because I'm not trying to monetize it or anything. But it was called Potatoes from Outer Space, and it was my first After Effects project. And in parts of it, I used the opening theme from Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it fits really well because it's kind of an homage to Ed Wood and to 1950s sci-fi in general, and that I just love the music and the font and the overall the black and white, the atmosphere that they had. That's what I grew up on.
I knew there was a reason I thought of you when I was watching this movie, Dane.
Oh well, it influenced me in a bunch of ways.
I knew that, and you didn't even tell me.
I know. Well,
Oh, well,
Oh.
I found that thing I was looking for. It's like a short found footage thing on the Monster of Monterey, and at 18 minutes, you'll see like the scariest fucking thing of all time, or at least to me. So enjoy that, Dave.
I'll have to give that a watch.
So, Brandon, did you have anything else to add to the foray?
The only thing that I can add on to it is that it was much more than I originally thought it would be, which shouldn't surprise me because I've seen pretty much all the other Universal films. I just haven't seen this particular one, and a lot of them there's a lot more depth to these creature features than you would think. At least if you're looking at it from the surface or from what people refer to them as during pop culture. This isn't just your cheesy popcorn films like like some of the stuff you see on Mystery Science Theater. These actually have a lot more depth to them. So I have to say it was something that was worth the experience, and I'm glad that I got to have it.
Cool.
Well, and it's one of those things that, like, glad you said that, because that's why I think the Universal monster films, as far as classic horror films, those are like the gold standard. And I think, at least for my money, Creature from the Black Lagoon is the best, because I feel like it's trying to say the most with its subject matter, and I think it succeeds the best with the kind of materials it's working with. Because, like, keep in mind, like, Dracula and the Frankenstein monster are probably more iconic figures in the sense that they came out earlier. They came out in 1931, but those films they're all classics in their own way. It's just like the big difference is that the kind of storytelling that was around in 1931 is not the same as the kind of storytelling that was around in 1954, which is not what it was in the 60s, 70s, all the way up until today, because it just pounds on itself. And like the 1930s, often you could have rather simple stories, but they were effective nonetheless. And then as you moved along, you got to see that they took more chances and that kind of stuff. And so you kind of see that reflected with Creature from the Black Lagoon. Plus, it's in widescreen. It has a bit more like conventional script structure, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with basically all of that. Like, this is almost certainly I'm gonna just call it early. Like, I think this is definitely the best Universal monster because it has its own like unique thing in it. Like, the Creature from the Black Lagoon is not some thing from an 1800s novel like characters like Dracula and Frankenstein are. Like, they came up with this more or less on their own. And I think that it shows kind of something about it. Just, it speaks to me more, and it's almost arguably a better character in that you don't get a whole lot of background info on the creature. Like, what if there really is more than one, or what if there really is more than one creature there at the lagoon, and they just keep running into this one?
There is a suggestion that there were more creatures at one point in time because of the claw that they found.
Exactly, and for a population to exist in the wild, there has to be more than one.
Well, that's what I said last time. That and I will very quickly. One thing, I'm so glad that all of the previous attempts at remakes and reboots and stuff have all failed, because that just allows for this one to be more pure and to stand the test of time. That being said, if one were to do a sequel, reboot, remake, I think it'd be great to see I would love to see multiple creatures in either the Black Lagoon or adjacent lagoon, something. You wouldn't start off the first movie with that, but as you went on, I think it'd be cool to see multiple ones and kind of see where they live and that kind of stuff.
Movie spin-offs that people have done over the years that I would like to mention is one being Bill Rebane's Rana, which is actually more of a frog creature, which Trauma.
Same difference.
Essentially, yeah, I know, but still.
Trauma from the Black Lagoon. That was basically it.
But they put it with a crappy title, Croat. I mean, who the hell? Anyways.
Actually,
Well, they tried.
I was going to say, Michael.
Also, Creatures from the Hillbilly Lagoon, which is
I saw that.
which
I
is
saw that a long time ago, too. That was weird.
Which is the kind of a comical side effect that was created by Richard Griffin, which I wanted to mention out there. Hello, Richard. Anyways,
Hey, random guy.
Actually, since speaking of Universal Monsters, did Abbott and Costello ever get to meet the creature from the Black Lagoon?
They did, actually.
well, and
They did or didn't?
plus,
I think they did.
if everyone remembers these,
Well, we got Monster Squad, like the Monster Squad.
I was going to mention that. I was going to mention that.
Oh, sorry, I beat you to it. Too bad now.
And various other and like Michelle was saying that people were saying that the shape of water was in likeness to the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I really want to see it now.
Well,
It's actually quite a good movie, and it's kind of like it's put back in time in a way, the way the clothes are, the film style. I loved it. Do I think it's a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie? Yes and no. I mean, the creature is similar, but the story is completely different.
Which is why I was going to suggest
It did win 3 Oscars.
Which is why I was going to suggest it as a follow-up for our next week's film.
Fuck yeah, doing it.
The thing I was going to say was that another person who was heavily inspired by Creature from the Black Lagoon was Chris Carter, who created the X-Files, and the creature that they had, the Fluke Man, was directly inspired by the creature from the Black Lagoon, except it was obviously a fluke creature.
Fluke Man was fucking creepy. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
It looked incredible.
I can see that though, like the design similarities to the Fluke Man's face.
Yeah. Well, he was directly inspired by that film, and you can definitely see similarities. You can also see some. I don't know. I kind of thought a little bit of possibly a case of like a Scully, Mulder, Skinner kind of dynamic with our 3 leads. It's very vague. It's not as like clear as other things that I've seen.
I need to watch that episode again. Like that's one of the better episodes of the X-Files too.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen the show for so long.
I haven't. I have the complete series, but I just haven't gone back to the very beginning because that's kind of a big commitment to do that. But
oh yeah, and I would argue about half of the X-Files episodes just aren't that exciting, frankly.
Okay.
My favorite.
What does everyone think about how he died in the end? How they just kind of sprayed him with bullets and then he fell in the water?
I don't think he died.
That left a lot open. Like, wasn't it revealed in the second one that no, he didn't die? Like he was sort of okay.
Yeah, we don't know if he died.
Correct.
I like that he returned to the water.
Which is why eventually down the road, I think we could cover the 2 sequels that were made. But I figured we'll space it apart so that it'll give us some time to go into them.
Well, and, keep in mind that Revenge of the Creature, I believe that was the one that I'm thinking of. That's the one that had, I think it was Clint Eastwood's very first movie role.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the extras for this one. Because it came up like a little 40-minute documentary just about all the creature movies. And it was like, oh yeah, Clint Eastwood was in this. And it's like, oh, neat.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, I think we talked about everything that needs to be talked about. So, Katie, why don't you end on the note and tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
Sure thing. I'm Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a body positive horror artist and alternative model. And you can find me now on patreon.com/Katie Cadaver, MKE. That stands for Milwaukee. Or on Instagram at Third Eye Open. That's 3RDEYE0PEN. I'm also the makeup artist for horror punk band Ratbat Spider, and you can listen to them at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. And I'm a Dead Girl for Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics, and you can watch Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics on vimeo.com/ddcc. And I also am a performer and a producer for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque. And you can find us at facebook.com/Grindhouse Tees. And if you are in the Cincinnati area and planning on going to Horror Hound this weekend, on Saturday I will be hanging out with Uncle Lloyd and the fine folks at Troma. So come and see us at the Troma booth at Horror Hound Cincinnati.
Cool.
Sweet. I have to have you pick some stuff up for me.
Will do.
Details later.
Thanks for coming back on. I know it's been a couple of weeks or whatnot. So why don't you tell
A couple?
us about? Yeah. So what? Anyways, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, Michelle?
Oh, you're talking to me. I didn't. I thought you were talking to Dustin.
Oh no, I was basically saying I missed you.
Aw. Yeah, well, I've had some career changes going on, and I wasn't happy with them. So when I don't like my life, I change it. So I'm in the process of the evolution of Michelle. So anybody who maybe is familiar with me, I've been in entertainment for 40 plus years out of the Detroit area. I think I'm losing sound here. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Michelle Yeager, Jaeger, and my birthday is on Thursday.
Cool.
Happy early birthday. I'll almost certainly forget.
All of us. So, Red Raven, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Red Raven. I'm from Lake Geneva, and I book shows in the Milwaukee area. And I'm also a Degger at Degger's Dark Coffin Classics.
Very cool. Do you have any concerts planned for the summer yet? Or?
There will be one coming up in June, and I'll let you know more about that as it gets closer.
Very cool. Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
Yes, I'm Brandon Farmer. I run a YouTube channel called Septum Send versus the World. We are all about physical media on our channel. We are starting actually to do some new things, trying to shake things up, make things a little bit more exciting, make the videos a little bit shorter but more enjoyable. And we have some fun coming up this week, actually. One, I'm doing a collection tour, and then the other is we're going to be doing a little vlog on movies in our collection that we can't stand but have in our collection anyway for alternate reasons.
Attack of the
Which
Killer
I
Tomatoes.
I actually have quite a few movies like that in my collection where it's like I know that they're not good, nor do I necessarily like them, but they're one of those things. Is like it's a movie that's so bad, it's like you got to just preserve it like a museum, you know.
Well, that's why I have a disaster movie in my collection.
I have the not so good a lot of the not so good Adam Sandler movies in there, and like movie 43 and things like that, just because it's like, you know, you just gotta remember what a bad movie really is. Like people always say, "Oh, so and so, it was so bad." Yeah, right. Yeah. Like I really do think that's important to like see bad movies, so that way you know what a bad movie truly is, because everyone will love to say that such and such was so bad, but they don't know.
Hi, Mark. Anyways, let's go to Dane. Dane, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from?
Well, I am Dane Kyle from Charlotte, North Carolina, independent filmmaker, and you can check out my YouTube channel for the film I mentioned, Potatoes from Outer Space, as well as some other stuff I've done. Let me think, I've done a whole lot of stuff lately. Like I just got done I was playing a killer clown, acting in a film that I wrote and directed, and I played a killer clown and trying to do it for Clownsploitation, which is the anthology film.
And I remember telling you about that.
Yeah, that's right. And I was just trying to shoot for it. But yeah, I'm trying to do that, and then let's see, my contribution to For We Are Many, that anthology film. They're still working on trying to shoot the wraparound for that, and we're still working on the web series. My latest film, The Big Blind, is it's out, and I need to get back on Without a Box in order to, find some festivals to submit it to and that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So lots going on, lots more pipeline very soon.
Cool. And Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
Yeah, I got a quick thing. So the band Mastodon has a song called "The Creature Lives," and I highly recommend you guys check that out because it was kind of written about the creature from the Black Lagoon. And I even found on YouTube here right now a video where somebody put, it to the movie.
Wait, what's the song called?
The Creature Lives. It's pretty fucking cool.
I think I've heard that song.
It's off of one of their older albums. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
But
I
just wanted to plug it for a moment there. Well, I'm Dustin. I go to UW Milwaukee here in Amsterdam. Milwaukee, yeah. And so pretty soon I'm going to be doing a review of a movie called Slippus, which I'm pretty sure is a crappy ripoff. Well, we'll see. It's probably a decent ripoff of Creature from the Black Lagoon. So that's going to be interesting. Look for that coming out fairly soon. I'm doing it at last. I have an Instagram where I show off all of the preposterous horror things I collect. DHR Hunter, all one word. And I'm going to be posting some new images fairly soon, including my little friend, the creature here, who you saw plenty of earlier. That was actually one of the first things I found when I came here to Milwaukee. It was only $10.
Cool.
So yeah, a lot of exciting things, and that review will be on Movies Galore's blog at link in description. Not quite to the review, not quite yet, but soon.
And I am your host, David Streggy. I run Movies Galore Milwaukee, which is a group as well as a blog. I also run Inside Movies Galore here with these fine deviants, as you see. And thank you for listening. For those of you who are listening out there, and I have a project that is coming out in, later this year called Wrestle Massacre, which definitely check that out. As we said, next week we will be doing The Shape of Water, which has won 3 Academy Awards at least. So definitely check that out next week, and hopefully stay tuned, like, and subscribe.